Part 2 of our week-long Hopeful Holiday series and the story of an extraordinary young man. Mason Wells was at the Boston Marathon in 2013 cheering on his mom. He was in France when terrorists struck Paris. And then in a cruel twist of fate, 3 years later, he was in the airport in Brussels, Belgium, when 2 more bombs exploded. Here's his incredible story.
I think I really just grew up in your normal white picket fence family. I have really amazing parents. I'm the oldest of 5 kids.
For 21-year-old Mason Wells, it was an ideal childhood growing up in Utah, filled with many special moments. And at the age of 16, one of those moments came when he was allowed to travel to Boston with his parents to watch his mother run in the Boston Marathon.
It was a huge event for her. It was something she'd been working towards her entire life. And, you know, for me, it was certainly exciting. We were there for 30 or 40 minutes, and we were looking for my mother. She passed us before we could catch her. We started going back towards the finish line. Once we got back towards the finish line, that's when the day took a turn for the worst. We crossed that street, and we could see out in the square that we saw kind of all the commotion going on. That's when we saw kind of the first sense of panic, the first people running, kind of the chaos that was ensuing. And it was at that point that we kind of broke off. My dad went to find my mother, and at that point he told me to go back to the hotel.
Luckily, Mason's mom escaped injury, but the experience left him shaken.
It actually left me with a lot of big questions afterwards. You know, I was pretty young, and those questions of why do these sorts of things happen? Why do bad things happen to good people?
Back in school, Mason dove into his studies and pursued his dream to one day attend the United States Naval Academy. But Mason's application was denied. Instead, the devout Mormon decided to serve as a missionary.
Ultimately, when I didn't get into the Naval Academy, I continued to search and pray to find out what I should do with my life, and it felt like the right thing to do.
The church sent Mason to serve in France. He was in the country in 2015 when terrorists struck in Paris. Yet again, he was spared.
To have gone through Boston and then to be surrounded by these sorts of things now in a different country, in a different part of the world, it was really frustrating.
His missionary work then led him to Brussels. And on the morning of March 22nd, 2016, Mason's good fortune appeared to run out. On March 22nd, 2016, Mason found himself in the wrong place at the wrong time. Suicide bombers detonated 2 explosives at the Brussels airport, where Mason had just arrived with friends.
We'd been in the check-in line for a total of about 30 seconds when the first bomb went off, and suddenly my world completely exploded. I remember that for the first second or two, the whole right side of my body got really hot and really cold, and suddenly it was just lots of pain. I had second-degree burns to my face and to the right side of my head. I had lacerations to the head, shrapnel to the head. I actually still have shrapnel embedded in my skull.
But we are happy to report that Mason Wells was left standing, which he writes about in his new book. Welcome, Mason. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And what a perfect name, given that history of, having been at the Boston Marathon when that terrorist attack happened, having been in France for the Paris attack, and then Brussels, where you were directly affected by it. Did you think that you were dying when the bombs went off in Brussels?
Well, initially, when the blast went off, everything exploded, right? And for me, it just felt like my whole world was getting torn apart. It took me a few seconds, but I actually thought that I had passed when I was first injured. I mean, you imagine, this thunderous sound, a flash of white, and you open your eyes and you're surrounded by dissipating fire. And that's what it was like for me. So to realize that I was alive and then to realize that I was also really injured, it was definitely an out-of-body experience. It was really surreal.
What was it like when you realized the full extent of your injuries?
I don't think I really realized until I ran out of the airport. The pain was definitely there, but the adrenaline kind of made it easier for me to run out. And
So the bomb went off and you ran out of the airport?
Oh, I ran out of the airport on a ruptured Achilles tendon, completely severed. The doctors don't really know how I did it, but I got out of the airport, and that's when my left leg gave out, and I realized how bad it really was.
So the next thing you know, you're in the ER, you're in the hospital?
Well, I mean, it was a long haul getting out of the airport. It took me almost 3 hours to get to a hospital. So I spent, 30 to 45 minutes laying there on that cold sidewalk, and I was kind of faced with two paths in front of me. There was kind of this path of bitterness I felt like I could embrace, this path of anger, of frustration. And I also saw another option. I saw an option that was an option of hope. And I chose the latter. And I don't regret it a single day since.
How? How did you not immerse yourself in feeling sorry for yourself, which I think a lot of people would?
No, I think yeah, it's really easy in one of those situations to feel that way. For me, I made the decision to be a survivor, not a victim. And I could really clearly, see also in my recovery that I had two options in front of me. I could either embrace each day, or I could let myself get down. Mm-hmm. And I think that as individuals, when we choose that better road, that choice to have optimism really changes us.
Was there a low point for you?
Oh, there were a few low points, and I wrote about those in the book. But one of those low points was definitely about 2 weeks in the University of Utah hospital. At that point, I was still stuck on a bed. I couldn't walk, couldn't use my right hand. A lot of the shrapnel injuries were repairing themselves, but I was still in pretty bad shape. And I can remember one morning just getting out of bed and feeling the load of the world on my shoulders. It was during those times that I had to do some introspection and realize that I could get through anything. And that's part of the foundation my parents set for me growing up.
How many surgeries have you had now?
Oh, I mean, depending on how you define a surgery, 7 to 8 surgeries and another 6 or 7 operations. It's been a really long road.
Somehow, with the love of your family and the support, you managed to get through it and did not let your original dream die.
No, I did not.
Of going to the Naval Academy. Have you gotten in?
Yeah, I'm actually there right now.
It's unbelievable. Chad and Kim, I know, Kim, I can see the tears in your eyes. What does this story mean to you? What does it mean? What lesson do you think we should glean from this?
I think we're still learning lessons from his experience. But I think for our family, it's you just don't give up. You keep having hope. And there is growth through trials, and we've learned that, not just with this, but with other experiences in life that everyone has. And I think it's just, you got to keep pressing on. There's a lot of good out there, a lot of good, and we seek for that.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. You look great. We're honored to have you in service for our country. Thank you for telling your story. Wow. And you can read more of Mason's story in his book, Left Standing, the miraculous story of how Mason Wells has survived the Boston, Paris, and Brussels terror attacks. So many.
Hello, Today fans. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking that button down there and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives.